지난 2월 24일 러시아가 우크라이나를 침공하면서 시작된 전쟁으로 지금까지 많은 재산적 피해와 또 인명 피해가 일어나고 지금까지 약 400만 명 정도의 피난민이 발생하면서 우크라이나의 주변 국가인 폴란드와 루마니아, 헝가리 등 이렇게 인근 국가로 많이 이주해 가고 있는 그런 상황이죠. 그런 가운데 그동안 브래드TV에서도 여러 차례 소개를 해드렸지만 상당수의 우크라이나의 유대인들이 이스라엘로 알려하고 있다고 하죠. 그런데 그 와중에 우리가 또 주목해야 될 것은 우크라이나에 있는 유대인들 중에서도 예수님을 믿는 메시아닉 주들이 우크라이나에 꽤 많이 있다고 하죠. 이들의 안전이 걱정되고 또 궁금하지 않을 수가 없습니다. 저희가 알기로는 이스라엘로 알리야하기 위해서는 유대교를 믿는 유대인이 아니면은 알리야할 수 없다라고 하는데, 그렇다면 우크라이나에 있는 유대인들 중에 이 예수님을 믿는 메시아닉 주들은 어떻게 돼가고 있는지, 그들이 아직도 우크라이나에 남아 있는지 이런 것들이 또 궁금하죠. 그런데 우크라이나에 있는 그 메시아닉 주들과 연결되어서 그들을 돕고 있는 이스라엘의 메시아닉 사역자가 있습니다. 바로 얼마 전에 이 출산의 고통이라는 책을 쓰고 또 한국어로 번역해서 출판을 하신 적이 있는 론 켄터 목사님이신데요. 오늘은 론 켄터 목사님과 함께 우크라이나의 지금 상황, 특히 우크라이나에 있는 메시아닉 주들의 상황, 그들이 어떤 처지에 좀 처해 있는지 이런 이야기와 또 우크라이나에서 일어나고 있는 여러 가지 전쟁과 또 하나님의 시간표, 이 마지막 때와 어떤 관련이 있는지 오늘은 좀 그런 이야기를 들어보도록 하겠습니다. 목사님 안녕하십니까?
Hello, it is so good to be here. Greetings from Tel Aviv.
목사님, 지난번에 저희가 그 셀라노 TV 때문에 인터뷰를 한 적이 있었는데 그 뒤로는 어떻게 됐습니까?
Shelano TV is doing great. Praise God. I am so encouraged about what's happening at Shelano TV. Just last week we were banned on TikTok. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Now we're on TikTok, and they banned us. They censored us. Now the reason I'm encouraged by that is because you don't censor somebody who's not having an impact. Clearly, they're getting a lot of complaints about us, which means people are watching. I got a testimony, and the other day we got a message from an Orthodox Jewish man named Shalom, who said he's been watching our programs and he has decided to give his life to Yeshua. So we are starting to get more and more testimonies like that. Another woman said that she began to watch our programs and she really liked them. So she came to one of our congregations and she brought a friend who also made a profession of faith. So God is using Shelano TV.
이번에는 우크라이나 좀 이야기를 좀 질문하겠습니다. 제가 알기로는 우크라이나에 유럽에서 가장 큰 메시아닉주 단체가 있다라고 얘기를 들었는데 우크라이나에 메시아닉 주들이 얼마나 있습니까?
I'm not sure how many Messianic Jews are in Ukraine, but they actually have the largest Messianic congregation in the world in Kiev. And in that congregation, there is over 2,000 people. It's led by my friend Boris Grushenko. After the former Soviet Union, the Iron Curtain came down, there was a revival in Ukraine. And when I lived there for the year that we lived there, 98, 99, it was just so easy to minister, to preach, to see people come to faith. Probably the most exciting thing that we did while we were there is we went to a city called Berdichev. Now, Berdichev is a very famous city. It's not very large, but there is a movie called Fiddler on the Roof. In Hebrew, it's Tevye the Milkman. The Jewish community of what was then Ukraine, Poland, Russia, and the persecution they went through, but it was based on this city, Berdichev. And Berdichev at one time had the largest concentration of Jewish people in the entire former Soviet Union, even going back to Tsarist Russia. Well, we went into that city with about 90 people and we held a festival for 2 days. And during that 2 days, about 200 people made professions of faith. 100 of them were Jewish. And by Saturday, we had a Messianic congregation, and we're still in touch with this congregation. We've been sending support to them. They've been going on the streets, handing out food and water and bread. They're taking care of people. And I want to thank the viewers of BRADTV, because you guys have sent us funds that we have then forwarded to the Messianic congregations.
유대인들이 우크라이나만 있는 게 아니라 유럽, 서유럽, 뭐 프랑스나 영국, 스페인 이렇게 여러 나라에 걸쳐서 유대인이 있는데 특별히 이렇게 우크라이나에 있는 유대인들 중에서 메시아닉주, 예수를 믿는 유대인들이 많은 이유가 있을까요?
You know, we ministered in Russia. We also ministered in Ukraine, and both of them, many of the countries of the former Soviet Union, after the Iron Curtain came down, experienced a wave of revival. But the Ukrainian revival has lasted until today. So there's still 200,000 Jews living in Ukraine. There was probably close to 1 million back in 1990-91 when the Iron Curtain came down. But those Jewish people, many of them, they were hungry after the Iron Curtain came down, because under communism, they were not allowed to practice Judaism. It was an atheist state for the most part. Jonathan Bernis, you probably know of Jonathan Bernis. He's the leader of Jewish Voice Ministries in America. He went to Odessa and he began to rent auditoriums. I believe the first one he did was in St. Petersburg, Russia. And they began to have these Jewish festivals, and thousands of Jewish and non-Jewish people would come, and they would sing and they would dance and they would sing the songs of Zion. And then he would come on at the end and give a gospel message in a Jewish context. That's what we did in Berdichev. So there was a real hunger, a spiritual hunger in the Jewish community there, and they have responded to that. So I think that Ukraine is a special country. It is a special place in God's heart, and there are still many, many Jews there. And you see, one of the reasons that they were open to the gospel, you know, Jewish people in America, you know, they grow up like me. So when we were able to approach them in the 90s, they didn't have all these walls telling them that they can't believe in Yeshua. So when we opened up the Bible and showed them the prophecies and preached the gospel, they received it. And we preached it in its original Jewish context. We didn't ask them to become Christians, to leave Judaism. We asked them to embrace their Messiah.
저희 브래드TV에서도 예전에 소개를 해드린 적이 있었는데, 전쟁이 난 이후에 우크라이나 키예프 쪽에 있는 메시아닉주들이 모여서 예배드리는 장면을 아주 감동적으로 봤거든요. 특히 제가 오프닝 멘트에서 이스라엘로 알리야하는 유대인들 중에는 유대교를 믿지 않는 사람들은 이스라엘로 알리야할 수 없기 때문에 우크라이나에 있는 메시아닉주들이 이스라엘로 갈 수 없다 이렇게 얘기를 했는데, 어떻게 제가 설명한 것이 맞는 얘기입니까?
Yes, there has been some persecution against Jewish Messianic Ukrainians wanting to come here, where if that knowledge is known by the Interior Ministry, they have tried to keep them from coming in. But we're seeing miracles. There's a young man named Kirill and his family. They were living in Odessa, Ukraine, and in 2000, I think 14 or 15, they went to the Ministry of Interior in Ukraine, the Israeli, what we call it the Jewish Agency. So they went there in Ukraine and they applied for Aliyah. But the problem was that their employer was the local Messianic Jewish congregation. So they were denied, and they were denied several times. And then recently, when the war started, they went to Kishinev, Moldova, and they applied again. And once again, they were denied because they were Messianic Jews. And so I was then put in touch with them, and I encouraged them. I said, listen, just get on a plane. We'll get the plane tickets. Come to Israel. I've got a lawyer here that will walk you through the whole process. We'll get you Aliyah. And during this time, they, I believe they received an email from the Jewish agency to come to Poland. So they went to Poland. They met with the Jewish agency, and the Jewish agency gave them an Aliyah visa. They are now in Israel. It was a real miracle because they clearly knew that they were Messianic Jews, and they originally asked them to sign a piece of paper saying that they would not do what they call missionary activity. And they were concerned. Can we sign that? Is it right? And And then the next thing they knew, they got their visas and they never had to sign anything. And now they've been in Israel for the past few weeks and they're starting a new life. So I believe that according to prophecy, that the Jewish people are going to come from the land of the north. You know, there's the prophecy in Jeremiah 16, verse 14 and 15. People will no longer say, as surely as the Lord lives, who brought the children of Israel up out of the land of Egypt, but they're going to say, as surely as the Lord lives, who brought the children of Israel out of the land of the north and from all the countries where I've scattered them. Now, if you just take a pencil on a map and you just go straight north from where I'm at right now in Tel Aviv, you're going to hit Odessa, Kiev, eventually Moscow. At the time that Jeremiah wrote that, he had no idea that 2,500 years later, there would be well over 1 million Jews in a land north of Israel. He thought he was talking about Babylon, which is really northeast of Israel, more east-north, if you will. It's more east than it is north. But we saw that prophecy come to pass in the 1990s, and we believe the Messianic Jews are going to come back. You see, here's what I believe, is that God is bigger than the ministry of interior here in Israel. And when God wants to bring them back, we're going to see more and more miracles like we saw with our brother and his family in Poland, where they got their visa to come here and now they're living here. So we're expecting more and more. And what we're doing is we're getting ready. We are raising funds. We are buying washing machines, mattresses, microwave ovens, hot water heaters, everything that they're going to need. We are working with other ministries here in Israel. One of my partners in Tikkun Global, his name is Pastor Guy Cohen. He is the leader of our congregation in Akko, and he has been working with the city government to provide for these families coming in. Now, we don't know who are Messianic or who are not Messianic. We're gonna help all of them.
그러면은 지금 요번에 기적같이 우크라이나의 메시아닉 주들이 이스라엘로 알리할 수가 있었는데, 그럼 지금 이스라엘에 온 메시아닉 주들은 몇 명 정도 되고 우크라이나에 아직도 남아있는 메시아닉 주들은 얼마나 됩니까?
I don't know exactly how many have already come. I don't know how many of them are Messianic, because this is happening just so quickly. You know, people are just grabbing a suitcase, filling it with the clothes. They're fleeing. So it's hard to know who's Messianic and who is not. I know that most of the men have stayed, and I'm in touch with many Messianic leaders in Ukraine, and they've told me that the men in their congregation have stayed in Ukraine, but they've sent their wives and their children to other countries. And then some of them, many of them have come to Israel. But no, I don't have the exact numbers.
그럼 요번에 우크라이나의 메시아닉 주들이 이스라엘로 알리할 수 있게 된 것이 기적이긴 하지만 이것이 이스라엘의 이민법 정책의 변화라고도 볼 수가 있는 겁니까?
Well, technically, the law says that any Jewish person with one Jewish grandparent can come back to Israel and make aliyah. So that would mean Messianic Jews. It should not make a difference. Now, here's what the Israeli law says. Right? I shouldn't say the law, the Supreme Court. If you're born Jewish and then you become a Messianic Jew, well, then you're no longer Jewish. You've left Judaism. Of course, I would say that's ridiculous, because all of the first followers of Yeshua were all Jewish. Paul was a rabbi, Peter, John, Andrew, they were all Jewish, and there's no hint in the New Testament that they switched to a new religion. They believe in the Hebrew scriptures. They believe in the prophecies about Messiah. So, of course, they didn't ask me at the Supreme Court. I would have loved to have argued there, but I'm not a lawyer. But they concluded that if you're a Messianic Jew, you've changed your religion. Now, that has not stopped many Messianic Jews from coming to Israel. A lot of them come quietly. They move here first, and then they fill out the paperwork. I don't know if this is going to lead to a change in the law. And by the way, there was a very interesting Supreme Court decision about 15 years ago, because according to Judaism, this is a little bit technical, so try and follow me here. But according to traditional rabbinic Judaism, you are Jewish if your mother's Jewish, not if your father's Jewish alone. So if somebody came to Israel and they'd say, well, my father's Jewish, but my mother's not Jewish, technically, under the law of return, they should be able to make aliyah to move to Israel because they have at least one Jewish grandparent. But technically, they're not Jewish because it's not on their mother's side. So Kalev Myers, a lawyer here in Israel, he took it to the Supreme Court and he argued. He said, according to Jewish law, they're not Jewish. They're, if just the father's Jewish. So therefore, they could not have changed their religion if they were never Jewish in the first place. Yet they have a Jewish grandparent, which means they should be able to make aliyah. And he won that case. And that opened the door for dozens and dozens of Messianic Jews who had been held up, who had a father or a grandparent on the father's side, Jewish. They were able to come into the country. I don't know when there will be a change in the law. I can tell you this. We had a great victory about a year ago, back when I was pastoring our congregation in Tel Aviv, Tiferet Yeshua. We applied for the Israeli government, for the tax authority, that when local Israelis would make donations, they would be able to deduct that from their taxes. And there would be like, well, no, you're a cult. We don't recognize you. And so we applied for this, and we were denied and denied and denied and denied over many years. It finally got to the Knesset about, I'm going to say 2 years ago. And the leader of one of our religious parties, a man by the name of Moshe Gafne, he went to all the committee members who would make this decision. Can this Messianic Jewish congregation have tax exemption on their donations? And he went to them privately so that when they met publicly, everybody was already ready to vote against it. And they did. It failed. So we took it to the Supreme Court. And we got a new government back in June of last year under Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid. And it was about maybe a week after that the Supreme Court, I had forgotten about it, but the Supreme Court, they not only ruled in our favor, and they gave us this status. So now our local Israeli members get it. And again, it's not about the money. It's about the prophetic precedent that it's saying, yes, we are legitimate here in Israel. But they even said to Moshe Gafni, what you did by denying these people their rights as Israelis was illegal, and they rebuked him. So that in the spirit, that was a big jump forward.
제가 이런 질문을 한 이유는 물론 또 그런 일이 일어나서는 안 되겠지만 이번에 우크라이나 전쟁과 같은 그런 전쟁이 우크라이나 말고 다른 나라에서도 또 일어난다든가 아니면 천재지변이 다른 나라에서 일어났을 경우에 혹시 그곳에 있는 유대인들 중에 예수님을 믿는 메시아닉 주들이 또 이스라엘로 알리야하게 되는 일들이 앞으로 계속 일어나게 되지 않을까 하는 기대감이 있어서 여쭤보는 건데 그렇게 될까요?
Let me say it like this. Because of the war, Israel is making it easier for Messianic Jews to immigrate. I don't know if they know they're Messianic Jews and they're just saying it doesn't matter, we have to save their lives, or it's so many coming at one time that they're just saying yes, 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 yes. I'm not sure exactly what the reason is, but I do think you're right. I think eventually this will happen in America, where there are still over 6 million Jews. We have seen the rise of far-right anti-Semitism in America and the rise of far-left anti-Semitism in America. We have seen the rise of neo-Nazi groups in America and nationalism, and we've also seen the rise on the left of radical anarchists who tend to, both, it's interesting. The far right and the far left agree on one thing: Israel is bad. The far right hates Jews because we're Jews. The far left hates Israel because they see Israel as a pro-war, pro-colonial, capitalist entity, and that persecutes Palestinians. So the far right and the far left, they don't agree on anything, except they agree on one thing: they don't like Jews.
지금 목사님 말씀대로 여기저기서 기적이 일어나고 있는 것 같아요. 예수야의 재림을 기다리는 우리로서 이런 일들이 일어나는 거, 전 세계에 있는 유대인들이, 특히 예수를 믿는 유대인들까지도 이스라엘로 알리하는 거, 그리고 러시아가 우크라이나를 침공하는 거, 기독교인의 관점에서 어떻게 봐야 됩니까?
He says, don't be alarmed. Don't be scared. These are the beginning of birth pangs. They come on, they're weak in the beginning, and then they get stronger and stronger. And they come on strong, and then they get softer, and then they come back, and then they get closer and closer together.
Strike on a block of flats. For now, the city remains, but the battle may be just beginning. Orla Guerin, BBC News, Kyiv.